I didn't cry when I found out. I didn't scream or break things or post about it online. I just sat very still in a conference room and realized something. The empire everyone thought he built? I built half of it, and he'd just tried to sign it away to someone else. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Audrey Chen. I'm 36 years old, and for 12 years, I loved a man named Rowan Blackwell before the world even knew his name. I loved him when success was just a rumor and failure slept beside us every night. I loved him when his dreams were heavy and his pockets were empty, when belief was the only currency we had. I didn't know then that love would become my greatest investment, and his greatest mistake, because the woman who builds a man in silence learns exactly how to take everything back when he forgets who laid the foundation. This is that story. Let me take you back to 2011. San Francisco. A tiny apartment in the Mission District that cost us $800 a month and had cockroaches that came out at night like they paid rent too. I was 24 years old, working as a junior analyst at a venture capital firm, making $52 a year and thinking I was doing okay. Rowan was 27, working 3 jobs, bartender at night, rideshare driver on weekends, and spending every other waking hour building a tech startup that everyone said would fail. We met at a coffee shop, literally the most cliché meeting possible. I was working on a pitch deck. He was at the next table, coding furiously, muttering to himself about server infrastructure. His laptop died. He didn't have a charger. I had an extra one in my bag. "Lifesaver," he said, plugging it in. "I'm on a deadline." "What are you working on?" "Something that's either going to change logistics forever or bankrupt me by Thursday. 50-50 odds right now," I laughed. "Those are terrible odds." "Yeah, but the upside is massive." That confidence, that absolute certainty mixed with self-aware humor, that's what got me. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about his idea, a platform that would revolutionize supply chain management using real-time data analytics and AI-driven predictions. It sounded impossible, expensive, years ahead of its time. "Nobody's funding this," he admitted. "VCs keep saying the market isn't ready, that I need to simplify, that I'm thinking too big." "Are you?" I asked. "No, they're thinking too small." 3 weeks later, we went on our first official date. 6 months after that, I moved into his apartment, which was even smaller than mine, but it was ours. For the next 2 years, we lived on my salary, while Rowan built Vanguard Logistics from our living room. I'd come home from work at 7 p.m., and he'd still be at the kitchen table, surrounded by coffee cups and protein bar wrappers, eyes red from staring at code for 14 hours straight. I'd make dinner. He'd eat without tasting it, already back to work. Some nights, I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and find him on the couch, laptop on his chest, finally passed out from exhaustion. I'd close the laptop, cover him with a blanket, kiss his forehead, and never once complain. Because I believed in him, not just in his idea, but in him. In 2013, he finally got his first investor meeting, a small fund, $250,000 potential seed round. He practiced his pitch for 3 weeks. I listened to it 47 times, timed him, questioned him, helped him refine every slide. The night before the meeting, he couldn't sleep. "What if they say no?" he whispered in the dark. "Then we find someone who says yes." "What if nobody says yes?" "Then we keep going until someone does, or until we prove them all wrong ourselves." He got the meeting. They said no. He came home destroyed, sat on the floor of our apartment, and just stared at the wall. I sat beside him, didn't say anything. After an hour, he said, "I should get a real job. Stop wasting our time." "Is that what you want?" "No." "Then we keep going." "Audrey, we're broke. You're supporting both of us. I'm 29 years old and I have nothing. You have me, and I have you. That's not nothing." He looked at me then, really looked at me. "Why do you believe in this so much?" "Because you do, and I believe in you." 3 months later, he got a second meeting, this time with a bigger fund. They said yes. $1.2 million seed round. Vanguard Logistics officially launched in January 2014. By December, they had 8 clients and $400,000 in revenue. By 2015, $3.2 million in revenue. By 2016, $18 million. And suddenly, Rowan Blackwell wasn't the guy from the coffee shop anymore. He was someone the world was starting to notice. By 2018, Rowan Blackwell was everywhere. Forbes 30 Under 30. TechCrunch featured him in a cover story. The quiet genius disrupting global logistics. He spoke at conferences, gave TED-style talks, was invited to private dinners with billionaires and politicians. Vanguard Logistics had grown to 240 employees, $127 million in annual revenue. Contracts with Fortune 500 companies. We'd moved out of our tiny apartment into a modern loft in Soma, then into a house in Pacific Heights with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge. Rowan wore custom suits now, had a personal assistant, traveled first class. The world looked at him and saw a self-made success story. A man who'd pulled himself up through intelligence, vision, and relentless work ethic. Nobody clapped for the woman who'd held the ladder. Nobody wrote articles about the girlfriend who'd paid rent for 2 years while he built the foundation. Nobody knew that when Rowan pitched that first successful investor meeting, I'd written half the slide deck. That when Vanguard's early platform kept crashing, I'd stayed up with him for 72 hours straight, helping troubleshoot and test. That when he couldn't afford to hire a marketing person in those first crucial months, I'd created the entire brand strategy, the website copy, the pitch materials, all while working my own full-time job. I didn't mind being invisible. I loved him. His success felt like our success. At least, that's what I told myself. Let me be clear about something. I wasn't just emotional support. I was structural support. In 2014, when Rowan was trying to close Vanguard's Series A funding round, the lead investor kept pushing back. Said the financials didn't make sense. That the projections were too aggressive. Rowan was panicking. We had 3 weeks until the term sheet expired. I took the financial model home from my VC firm, the one we used to evaluate companies, and rebuilt Vanguard's projections from scratch. I worked every night for 2 weeks. Restructured the revenue model, created realistic growth scenarios, built out sensitivity analyses that addressed every concern the investor had raised. When Rowan presented the revised deck, the investor signed within 48 hours. $8 million Series A. Rowan's name was on that term sheet. My work was invisible. In 2015, when Vanguard was trying to land their first major enterprise client, a contract worth $2.3 million, the procurement team kept asking technical questions Rowan couldn't answer. I spent 3 weekends learning their industry inside and out, helped Rowan prepare responses, even sat in on the final pitch meeting as his strategic advisor. We won the contract. It became Vanguard's signature case study. Rowan presented it at conferences. I watched from the audience. In 2016, I left my job at the VC firm to work at Vanguard full-time. Not because Rowan asked me to, because I wanted to. I became VP of Strategy. No salary at first, just equity. 8% of the company. I built the partnerships division from nothing. Established relationships with suppliers. Negotiated contracts. Hired and trained a team. Within 18 months, my division was generating 40% of company revenue. People started calling me Rowan's secret weapon. I should have realized that's exactly what I'd become. A weapon. Useful when needed. Easy to set aside when the war was over. The shift started in early 2019. Small things at first. Rowan started having meetings I wasn't invited to. Board stuff, he'd say. Nothing strategic, just investor updates. But I was VP of Strategy. Investor updates were literally my domain. Then decisions started happening without my input. New hires I'd never met suddenly appearing in my division. Budget allocations I hadn't approved. Partnership deals closing without my signature. One day in March, I found out we'd restructured our entire pricing model. My pricing model, the one I'd built. And nobody had told me. I asked Rowan about it. Oh, yeah, sorry, babe. It came up in a board meeting. We had to move fast. I should have been in that meeting. You don't need to worry about board-level stuff anymore. You've got enough on your plate. That sentence, that one sentence changed everything. You don't need to worry about that. Like I was a child. Like I was incapable. Like my contributions had been, what? Temporary? Conditional? Rowan, I built that pricing model. It impacts my entire division. And it's still your division. We just made a few adjustments. It's fine. I should have been consulted. He sighed. The kind of sigh that said I was being difficult. Audrey, you're taking this personally. It's just business. The board makes strategic decisions. That's how it works. I'm on the executive team, and you're amazing at what you do, but board decisions happen at a different level. You understand, right? I didn't. But I said I did, because that's what I'd been trained to do. Understand. Accommodate. Step aside. Rowan didn't become cruel. He became dismissive. And dismissal is crueler than anger, because it doesn't even acknowledge your presence enough to fight you. By mid-2019, I barely saw him. He was always traveling, New York, London, Singapore. Expanding the business, he'd say. When he was home, he was on calls, in meetings, at dinners with investors and clients, and people I'd never met. We stopped having breakfast together, stopped going to bed at the same time, stopped talking about anything that wasn't surface-level logistics. How was your day? Good. Busy. You? Same. That was our marriage. Because yes, we'd gotten married in 2017. Small ceremony in Napa Valley. Just family and close friends. I'd worn a simple dress. He'd cried during his vows. You saved me, he said. When everyone told me to quit, you told me to keep going. I wouldn't be here without you. 2 years later, he acted like I'd never been there at all. At company events, he'd work the room without me. I'd stand by the bar, watching him charm investors and clients, wondering when I'd become part of the furniture. People would ask me, "What's it like being married to Rowan Blackwell?" And I'd smile and say, "He's brilliant. I'm very proud." Nobody asked what I did at the company. Nobody asked about my division's success. I was Rowan's wife, not Audrey Chen, VP of Strategy, not the woman who'd helped build this empire. Just his wife. Power doesn't argue, it excludes. And I was being systematically excluded from the company I'd helped create. Her name was Elowen Pierce. I first heard about her in August 2019. Rowan mentioned he'd hired a new chief operating officer, someone with experience scaling tech companies, Harvard MBA, previously at Google. She's amazing, he said. Exactly what we need for the next phase. I met her 2 weeks later at an executive team meeting. Elowen Pierce was 33, elegant in that effortless way some women are. Perfectly tailored blazer, minimal jewelry, the kind of confidence that comes from never having been told no. She shook my hand. Audrey, I've heard so much about you. Good things, I hope. Of course. Rowan says you were instrumental in the early days. Were. Past tense. She smiled when she said it, but the words landed like a blade. Over the next 3 months, Elowen became Rowan's right hand. She was in every meeting, every decision, every board presentation. She traveled with him to New York, to London, to Singapore. She had dinner with him and investors, sat beside him at conferences, finished his sentences during pitches. People started referring to them as Rowan and Elowen, like they were a unit, like she was the partner building this empire. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was just professional, that they were colleagues, that my insecurity was ugly and unfair. But late at night, when Rowan would come home from another business dinner with Elowen, smelling like expensive wine and someone else's perfume, I'd lie awake wondering when exactly I'd been replaced. Not in his bed, in his vision. Because that's the thing about ambitious men. They don't always cheat with sex. Sometimes they cheat with relevance. and Elwyn Pierce had become more relevant to Rowan's empire than I was. I should have seen it clearly, but love makes you stupid. The late-night calls he'd take in another room, the private jokes with Elwyn during meetings that nobody else understood, the way he'd light up when she walked into a room, that energized, focused expression he used to have with me. The fact that he'd stopped touching me, not dramatically, just gradually. A kiss on the cheek instead of the lips. Sitting on opposite ends of the couch instead of curled together. Sleeping on his side of the bed with a wall of space between us. When I tried to initiate intimacy, he'd say he was tired, stressed, had an early meeting. We'd gone 4 months without sex, 4 months, and I'd convinced myself it was normal. That successful couples went through phases like this. That once the company stabilized, we'd reconnect. But the company wasn't stabilizing, it was accelerating, and I was being left behind. One night in November, I woke up at 2 a.m., and Rowan wasn't in bed. I found him in his home office, on a video call, with Elwyn. "We can restructure the board composition in Q1, she was saying. "It'll give us more control over strategic decisions." "What about the existing shareholders?" Rowan asked. "We dilute them during the Series C. It's standard practice." I stood in the doorway, watching. They were planning the company's future. Without me. At 2 a.m., Rowan looked up and saw me. For just a second, he looked guilty. Then the guilt disappeared. "Hey, babe, did we wake you?" "What are you doing?" "Just working through some cap table scenarios with Elwyn. Go back to bed. I'll be done soon." I went back to bed. He never came. When I woke up at 6 a.m., he was asleep on the office couch, still in yesterday's clothes. His laptop open beside him. I should have confronted him then, should have demanded answers. But love told me not to assume. Love told me to trust. Love told me I was overreacting. Vision was still sleeping. Everything changed on December 16, 2019. Rowan was in New York, another investor roadshow. I was working from home, catching up on partnership contracts. His assistant called me. "Audrey, hi. I'm so sorry to bother you, but Rowan needs a document from his home office, the Meridian contract. He said it's in the filing cabinet, top drawer." "Sure, I'll find it and scan it to you." I went to his office, found the filing cabinet, top drawer. There were dozens of folders. I started flipping through them, and that's when I saw it. A folder labeled, "Corporate Restructuring, Confidential." I should have stopped. Should have just found the Meridian contract and left. But something made me open it. Inside was a draft agreement, dated 3 weeks earlier. Vanguard Logistics, Inc. Equity reallocation and board restructuring. I started reading. My hands were shaking by the second page. The document outlined a plan to restructure the company's equity. My 8% would be diluted to 2.4% through a new funding round. Remove me from the executive team. My role as VP of Strategy would be transitioned to a senior advisor position with no operational authority. Appoint Elwyn Pierce as President and COO, with a seat on the board and 6% equity. Create a new executive compensation structure that excluded me from profit-sharing bonuses. There was a timeline. January 2020. Complete Series C funding, $50 million. February 2020. Implement board restructuring March 2020. Announce organizational changes. April 2020. Transition Audrey to advisory role. It was all there, in black and white. A blueprint for erasing me from the company I'd helped build. At the bottom of the document was a note in Rowan's handwriting. Elwyn, reviewed with counsel, proceeding as discussed, R. I sat there on the floor of his office, holding that document, feeling my entire world rewrite itself. He wasn't just excluding me from meetings. He was planning to remove me completely, legally, strategically, permanently. And he'd been doing it with Elwyn. That's when my heart went quiet. Not broken, quiet. Because heartbreak is loud. It screams and cries and demands to be heard. But what I felt was different. It was cold, clear, Calculating. Betrayal isn't always emotional, sometimes it's legal. And legality makes it lethal. I didn't call Rowan. I didn't send angry texts or leave voicemails demanding explanations. I photographed every page of that document. Every single page. Then I put it back exactly where I'd found it. I found the Meridian contract, scanned it, sent it to his assistant. Then I went back to work like nothing had happened. When Rowan came home 2 days later, I greeted him normally. "How was New York?" "Productive. We're close to closing the Series C." "That's great. I made dinner. We ate. We talked about nothing important." He didn't suspect a thing. Because men drunk on success believe loyalty is permanent. They think the woman who stood by them when they had nothing will stand by them forever. No matter what. I let him believe that. While I did something he never expected, I studied him. Over the next 6 weeks, I became a forensic investigator of my own life. I went through every document I could access, every email, every contract, every financial record. I tracked down the original operating agreement from 2014, the one that granted me 8% equity. I found my employment contract from 2016 when I joined full-time. I documented every major contribution I'd made to the company. The Series A financial model that saved the first funding round, the enterprise client strategy that landed our biggest contracts. The partnerships division I'd built from nothing. The pricing model they were still using. The brand strategy, the pitch decks, the operational frameworks. I created a timeline. A paper trail. Evidence that I wasn't just Rowan's wife. I was a founder in everything but title. Then I started looking at what Rowan and Elowen had been doing. The corporate restructuring wasn't the only thing. I found shell companies. 3 of them, registered in Delaware. I found trust accounts in Rowan's name only. I found emails between Rowan and Elowen discussing asset protection strategies. They weren't just planning to dilute my equity. They were planning to hide assets before doing it, make it look like the company wasn't worth as much as it was, so that when my 2.4% was calculated, it would be worth almost nothing. It was sophisticated, calculated, cold, and it was illegal. I found the complete plan in early February. Not in Rowan's office this time, in his laptop. He'd left it open one morning while he was in the shower. I had maybe 4 minutes. I opened his email, searched for Elowen's name, found a folder. EP, private. Inside were dozens of emails. Planning emails. Subject, timeline, revised. Rowan. Legal says we need to be careful with the equity reallocation. Audrey has a strong case for founder status if she pushes back. Elowen. Then we don't give her time to push back. We execute everything simultaneously. Funding closes, board restructures, announcement happens all in the same week. By the time she realizes what's happened, it's done. Rowan. What about her operationally? She still runs a major division. Elowen. We transition her clients to my team over Q1. Quietly. By March, she'll be advisory in function before she's advisory in title. Nobody will notice the difference. Rowan. And personally? Elowen. What about it? Rowan. How do I handle the conversation? Elowen. Professionally, this is business, not personal. She's been invaluable, but the company has outgrown her skill set. It happens. She'll understand eventually. I read that email 3 times. The company has outgrown her skill set. The company I'd helped build. The skill set I'd used to save it multiple times. There were more emails. Subject, post-transition Elowen. Once the restructuring is complete, we should discuss my long-term role. If we're building this together, I need to know you're committed. Rowan. I am. You know I am. Elowen. Then let's make it official, not just professionally. Rowan. Soon, I promise. I heard the shower turn off. I closed the laptop, walked calmly back to the bedroom. Rowan came out toweling his hair. Morning, babe. Morning. He kissed my cheek, left for the office, and I stood there understanding exactly what was happening. This wasn't just about business. Elefian wasn't just replacing me at the company. She was replacing me completely. Public separation, private exile. A graceful exit for him, transitioning from one phase of life to another. A brutal one for me, erased from the empire I'd helped create, and nobody would even know. Because Rowan Blackwell was beloved, and I was invisible. I stopped crying, stopped wondering if I was misunderstanding, stopped making excuses for him. Love ended on February 8, 2020, not with a conversation, with a decision. I called my former colleague from the VC firm, a woman named Diana Morse, who'd left to start her own corporate law practice, specializing in founder disputes. Diana, it's Audrey Chen. I need help. We met the next day at a coffee shop far from our office. I showed her everything: the restructuring documents, the emails, the shell companies, the timeline. She read for 40 minutes without speaking. Finally, she looked up. Audrey, this is egregious and possibly illegal. Can I stop it? You can do better than stop it. You can take control. How? Your original equity agreement has founder protection clauses, standard anti-dilution provisions. They can't dilute you without your consent or without cause. And the company outgrowing your skill set isn't cause when you're actively generating 40% of revenue. So the restructuring is invalid. Not just invalid. It's breach of contract. And the asset hiding? That's fraud. If they're moving money into shell companies to artificially deflate valuation before diluting you, that's criminal. What do I do? She smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. We build a case, and we take everything. Diana assembled a team. A forensic accountant named Marcus Webb, who'd worked white-collar crime for the FBI. A corporate litigator named Sarah Chin, who specialized in founder disputes, and a journalist named Rachel Torres, who'd made a career out of exposing tech industry misconduct. We met in Diana's conference room. I showed them everything I had. Marcus studied the financial documents. This is textbook asset concealment, he said. They've created shell companies to hold valuable contracts. They're routing revenue through these entities to keep it off Vanguard's books temporarily. When they restructure, they'll claim lower company valuation, dilute your equity to nothing, then suddenly discover all this hidden revenue after the fact. Can you prove it? Give me 3 weeks. I'll trace every dollar. Sarah reviewed the contracts and emails. The equity reallocation violates your founder agreement. The removal from your operational role violates your employment contract, and doing both without your knowledge or consent? That's grounds for a lawsuit that would destroy them. What about Rowan personally? If he's knowingly participating in fraud, he's personally liable, not just as CEO. Personally. Rachel was the most direct. Audrey, this story has everything. Powerful male CEO, female co-founder pushed out, possible affair with the woman replacing her, financial fraud. It's explosive. I don't want revenge, I said. I want what's mine. Sometimes those are the same thing. We worked for 6 weeks. Marcus traced the money, found $18 million in hidden assets. Sarah built an airtight legal case, documented every violation. Rachel researched Rowan's public image, found inconsistencies in his origin story, quotes where he'd never mentioned my contributions. By mid-March, we were ready, but I wanted one more thing. I wanted him to show his hand publicly. Every year, Vanguard Logistics hosted a charity gala. Big event. 300 guests. Donors, investors, clients, press. It was Rowan's signature event, his moment to shine. The 2020 gala was scheduled for March 21st. I told Diana, I want to wait until then. Why? Because I want everyone to see it. The night of the gala, I wore a red dress. Not bright red, deep red, the color of wine or blood. Elegant, understated, powerful. Rowan barely noticed. He was too busy working the room with Elowen. She wore black. They looked like a matched set. I watched them from across the ballroom. The way he touched her lower back when guiding her through the crowd. The way she laughed at things he said. The way people watched them and nodded approvingly, like they were witnessing something special. A power couple, building an empire together. I smiled, because they had no idea what was coming. The evening followed its usual format: dinner, speeches, and auction. Rowan took the stage at 9 p.m. for his annual address. He talked about Vanguard's growth, the future of logistics, the importance of innovation. Then he did something new. "I want to take a moment to thank someone extraordinary," he said. "Someone who's been instrumental in taking Vanguard to the next level. Elowen Pierce, our Chief Operating Officer, has brought strategic vision and operational excellence that's transformed this company. Elowen, could you join me up here?" She walked to the stage. The room applauded. He handed her a crystal award. "To the future," he said. They posed for photos. The camera flashes were blinding. I sat at my table, smiling like I wasn't bleeding inside. Then Rowan said something that sealed his fate. "Elowen and I make a great team, and I'm excited to announce that starting April 1st, she'll be joining me as president and member of the board of directors." The room erupted in applause. Nobody noticed me stand up. Nobody noticed me walk toward the stage. Until I was there, taking the microphone from Rowan's hand. The room went silent. Rowan's face, confusion mixed with annoyance. "Audrey, what are you—" "I'll only take a minute," I said into the microphone. My voice was calm, clear. I looked out at 300 faces. Investors, clients, press, employees. For those who don't know me, I'm Audrey Chen. I've been with Vanguard since the beginning. I'm also Rowan's wife. Murmurs in the crowd. Rowan just talked about the future, about the team that's building this company. I thought it might be helpful to talk about the past, about who actually built the foundation you're all celebrating tonight. Rowan stepped toward me. "Audrey," I held up a hand. He stopped. In 2014, when Vanguard was 3 weeks away from losing its first major investment, I rebuilt the financial model that saved the deal. That $8 million Series A that launched this company, my work made it possible. I could see people in the audience checking their phones, probably verifying this. In 2015, when Vanguard landed its first $2.3 million enterprise contract, the one Rowan still talks about at conferences, I spent 3 months preparing that pitch. I sat in the final meeting. We won together. Elowen was frozen on stage. In 2016, I left my career to join Vanguard full-time. I built the partnerships division from nothing. Today, it generates 40% of company revenue. I hired and trained that entire team. I structured every major deal. The room was absolutely silent now. 3 months ago, I discovered documents in my husband's office. Documents outlining a plan to remove me from the company, to dilute my equity from 8% to 2.4%, to erase my operational role, to systematically push me out of the business I helped build. Gasps. Whispers spreading through the crowd. Rowan's face had gone pale. "That's not— You're misrepresenting—" "I'm not finished." My voice cut through his. Those same documents revealed something else. Shell companies designed to hide assets. Financial restructuring intended to artificially deflate company valuation before my equity dilution. This isn't just business disagreement. This is fraud. I reached into my clutch, pulled out a USB drive. This drive contains 218 pages of evidence, financial records, emails, contracts, all documenting systematic efforts to steal what I helped create. I held it up so the cameras could see it. Tomorrow morning, this evidence will be filed with the California Attorney General's office. It will also be provided to the SEC, the IRS, and to every investor and board member of Vanguard Logistics. Rowan tried to grab the microphone. "You can't. This is slander. It's documentation. There's a difference. Continue 6:30 a.m. I looked directly at Elowen. "Ms. Pierce, you should know that many of these emails include your correspondence with Rowan. Your participation in the restructuring plan, your knowledge of the asset concealment. You're not just the COO who's being promoted. You're a co-conspirator in financial fraud. Elowen's face crumbled. She looked at Rowan. He looked away. That's when she understood. She wasn't special. She was useful. And now that usefulness had turned into liability. I set the microphone down on the podium, walked off the stage, through the silent ballroom, out the doors. Behind me, chaos erupted. But I didn't look back. By 8 a.m. the next morning, 3 board members had called emergency meetings. By noon, 2 major investors had demanded audits. By 3 p.m., the story had hit TechCrunch. Vanguard Logistics faces fraud allegations from co-founder. Rachel's article was devastating. She'd interviewed former employees who corroborated my contributions. She'd found public records showing the shell companies. She'd gotten statements from 2 investors who said they'd never been informed about the corporate restructuring. The article included a quote from Diana. Audrey Chen isn't just a scorned spouse. She's a founder who's been systematically erased from a company she helped build. The evidence of financial misconduct is overwhelming. By evening, Vanguard's board issued a statement. The board of directors takes these allegations seriously. CEO Rowan Blackwell and COO Elowen Pierce have been placed on administrative leave pending an independent investigation. 2 weeks later, the investigation concluded. Marcus's forensic analysis was irrefutable. $18 million in hidden assets. Deliberate misrepresentation of company valuation. Breach of fiduciary duty. The board had no choice. April 15, 2020. Conference room at Diana's office. Rowan, his attorney. Elowen, her attorney. Diana, Sarah, and me. We'd been negotiating for 3 hours. Rowan's attorney kept trying to frame it as a misunderstanding. My client acknowledges there were communication failures. Your client committed fraud, Sarah said flatly. We have 218 pages of evidence. We can do this in court if you prefer, but I promise you that won't end well for him. Rowan looked at me across the table. It was the first time we'd been in the same room since the gala. Audrey, please, we can fix this. We built this company together. No, I said quietly. I built this company. You took credit for it. There's a difference. That's not fair. What's not fair is planning to erase me. What's not fair is hiding assets. What's not fair is replacing me with your mistress and thinking I'd never notice. Elowen flinched at the word mistress. Diana slid a document across the table. Here are our terms, non-negotiable. Rowan's attorney read it. His face went gray. The terms, equity restoration. My ownership would be restored to 12%, reflecting the value I'd added beyond my original 8%. Board seat. I would join the board of directors immediately. Executive role. I would become co-CEO with full operational authority. Asset recovery. All hidden assets would be returned to company accounts. Rowan's demotion. He would remain with the company, but report to me. Elowen's termination. She would be removed immediately with no severance. Public acknowledgement. Rowan would issue a public statement acknowledging my foundational role in Vanguard's success. This is insane, Rowan's attorney said. You're asking him to give up control of his own company. It's not his company, I said. It's ours, and he tried to steal my half. Rowan stared at the document. If I don't sign this? Then we go to court, Diana said, where all of this becomes public record, where criminal charges are very possible, where Vanguard's reputation is destroyed, and your investors sue you into oblivion. She leaned forward. Or you can sign this. Keep the company alive. Keep your role, diminished as it is, and accept that actions have consequences. Silence. Finally, Rowan picked up the pen. His hand was shaking. He signed. I kept the title. I kept the empire. He kept his name on the door. But everyone would know who really owned it. Elowen Pierce left California the day after the settlement. No goodbye, no forwarding address, just gone. I heard later she'd taken a position at a startup in Austin. Smaller company, smaller salary, smaller everything. Power isn't attractive when it's unstable. And Rowan Blackwell was no longer powerful. He'd been exposed, diminished, reduced to a subordinate in the company he thought he owned. Ilawan hadn't fallen in love with Rowan. She'd fallen in love with his empire. And the moment that empire wasn't his anymore, she disappeared. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. May 2020. I did my first interview, not because I wanted attention, but because I was done being invisible. Rachel interviewed me for a feature in Forbes, The Woman Who Built Vanguard, Audrey Chen's Fight for Recognition. In it, I talked about everything: the early years, the contributions nobody acknowledged, the systematic erasure. The article ended with a quote: "For 12 years, I loved a man who was building an empire. I helped him build it. And when he tried to take it all away, I realized something. It was never just his empire. It was ours. So I took back what I'd helped create. Not out of spite, but because I earned it." The article went viral. Within a week, I was getting interview requests from major publications, speaking invitations from women in tech groups, messages from dozens of women saying, "This happened to me too." I'd become something I never intended to be. A symbol of women who stay silent while building empires. And what happens when they finally speak? Today, Vanguard Logistics is worth $890 million. My 12% is worth approximately $107 million. Rowan still works there. He's technically Chief Vision Officer. It's a made-up title that means nothing. He shows up to meetings, offers opinions that nobody asks for. I'm polite to him, professional. But we're not married anymore. The divorce finalized 8 months after the settlement. He didn't contest it, didn't ask for anything, just signed the papers and moved out. He lives in a condo in Soma now, drives a Tesla, still gets invited to some conferences. But he's no longer the golden boy of tech. He's the cautionary tale, the man who tried to erase his co-founder and lost everything. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty, if I think I destroyed his life. I don't. Because I didn't destroy anything. I reclaimed what was mine. There's a difference. For 12 years, I loved Rowan Blackwell before the world knew his name. I believed in him when nobody else did. I built with him, sacrificed for him, stood beside him. And when he forgot that, when he tried to replace me with someone newer, shinier, more convenient, I did what any smart businesswoman does. I took back my investment. With interest. People think this story is about revenge. It's not. It's about value. About understanding what you're worth and refusing to accept less. About recognizing that loyalty without respect is just exploitation. About knowing when to stop building someone else's empire and start claiming your own. I loved the man who built an empire. He loved someone else. So I took it all. Not because I'm cruel, but because I earned it. And in the end, love may build quietly, but betrayal teaches you how to collect. If you've ever felt invisible while helping someone else succeed, if you've ever wondered if your contributions mattered, if you've ever been told you're overreacting when you know something's wrong, leave a comment. You're not crazy, you're not paranoid. You're seeing clearly, and sometimes seeing clearly means realizing it's time to take back what's yours.